how do you manage a diverse team? You might have team members who are neurodiverse, are LGBTQ, who may be Black.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the Speaking for Profit podcast. I'm Evolve Benton, and I am really looking forward to today's conversation. We're going to dive into a deep dive on psychological safety, emotional intelligence, and really how to lead in the moment. And today we have an amazing guest, Geronda, here to talk about their experience as a speaker and consultant, some of the success they've had in speaking for profit, but really how they support organizations in growing their psychological safety and growing their community. Because when people go to a place where they work and they feel safe, they're going to show up as their authentic selves. They're going to show up with love. They're going to show up with compassion. And I know that's something that some of you in the audience are probably thinking about for yourself, like as you're navigating the workplace, or maybe as you're navigating looking for a new job, if you've unfortunately been laid off, how do you show up as your most authentic self? And what are some of those practices that organizations can be doing? So I'm really, really pumped about today's conversation. If you're watching here on YouTube, just go on and like and subscribe and deep dive into this conversation. Get comfortable and get ready to learn how to speak for profit. All right, Geronda, let's bring you to the stage so we can have this conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited for this.
Me too. So do me a favor. I always start with this question because I think it's just so important. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what brings you joy.
Oh, yes, I love that question. So Geronda Wollack-Spiller, I'm a speaker and a coach. And as Evolve had mentioned, I help organizations with leadership awareness so they can bring psychologically safe practices to their organization. And there's quite a few things that bring me joy, but I think the biggest thing that brings me joy is being able to create a space for folks to feel like they have an advocate. As someone who's Black and queer, I know the feeling of what it's like to feel historically marginalized or the only or excluded, and so being able to amplify those voices and be an advocate for folks brings me a lot of joy. And of course, my wife also brings me joy. But one other thing I'll share, that's something about that's a hobby of mine that I love and brings me a lot of joy is fishing. I know some people have like a love-hate with fishing, but for me, it's a place for me to just be just by myself and be present in my mind and just have a peaceful moment. So that's what brings me joy.
That's so cool. I did not know that about you. I didn't know that you were like a fisher person. I'm really excited about this. We can go catch some fish. It was this thing during COVID, right? So during COVID, we all wanted to do something new, right? And I remember watching all these videos about fishing, and my best friend is actually really into it. And then I seen people taking the fish and they take them home and then they, prepare them. And I was like, this is really intense. And then people were using different things for fishing. Like one had like almost like a large gallon and a string and just so many different ways to do it. So it was something that I kind of deep dive in, never really did anything with. But now that I have a person who loves it, this might be a play date that we have to come together and do very, very soon.
Yes, of course. Yes. That's a good fish.
So when I first met you, Geronda, I remember that your offer in particular was really focused on LGBT folks. And I've seen that you really expanded that. And I just want to talk a little bit about how you got there, because I think that there's so many probably speakers and consultants who are watching today who are thinking, I can talk about a million things. Like, how did you really hone in on, number one, something that was going to create an impact in the world, but also something that you felt like you had integrity to speak and to talk about?
Yeah, it was a journey, and I'll say what I appreciate so much about um and I'm gonna start going in and giving a plug for speaking for profit. It I had more clarity by really breaking down what made the most sense for me to talk about. So being LGBTQ, like being lesbian and supporting the community, I still do in more of a coaching capacity. But I started really going back to a lot of my experiences and the experiences that I was hearing from other folks, and that was through conversation and sometimes so many surveys and polling and things on LinkedIn to understand like what are the specific needs for the community. And I was super, super narrow focused for a while, which I think was helpful in some ways. But I started thinking about I've had so many experiences where I was a direct report or I was a leader in a space, and there were many opportunities that I found where there just wasn't an awareness from the leadership perspective on how you can support folks from historically marginalized backgrounds and especially their intersectionality of who they are. And so by having like brainstorming conversations with Evolve and BX and thinking about my audience and my I help statement, it really got me thinking about those experiences to be able to say, well, it's not so much about me um, just widely supporting the community, which I still love and do, but it's tackling the bigger underlying issue of how can we build this awareness and understanding for leaders, not just through training or um, small awareness, but like getting deep into them understanding their own personal awareness and what holds them back from providing those safe spaces for this community. So it was a lot of brainstorming and trying and trial and error and collecting as much data as I can from the LGBTQ audience, which was a great suggestion I got from S4P to get more clarity in that area.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And, I think sometimes we get caught up in, if I leave out this community, I'm not going to create the impact that I want to create, especially when we're a part of the community. So I remember you being very much emotionally attached to it. But what's so brilliant about the content that you've been creating is, even though this is like the frame, your queerness, right? Like the sweater wearing, right? Like I remember that in your bio, all of that's living within your content. So sometimes the way that we market ourselves is communicating even more than the I help statement. And I think that that's really what's been like really cool and beautiful about your journey. When you first started working with us, you had got paid to speak before, but can you tell people, I always like this part of the story, even if it wasn't your first time wasn't with S4P, when you realize like, oh wow, I can use words and then they're gonna pay me for it. Like, how did it feel? Like, what was that moment like for you? Just take us a little bit down that journey for you.
Yeah, well, it was it was amazing, and it's so interesting because I didn't know that. I guess I wouldn't say I didn't know. I think I was hesitant because I wasn't sure if this could become like a second career or like a side hustle or anything. And I did some speaking that was for colleges, and some of them were free. And then when I first initially got paid, I was like, I can actually do this and actually make money. Like this is amazing, because I love doing it so much, and I love speaking. I love coaching and supporting. I do some consulting as well, but I think the feeling that I had was this is a space where I feel like I can be my most authentic self and do something that's making an impact that I also enjoy and have a passion for, while also getting paid for the value that I'm bringing. And it just started making me want to get paid more. So it was like, I need to start doing what I need to do to get paid more as I'm doing this. Because I really want to be in many different spaces with it. So it was an amazing feeling. And I'll say to my wife was like, "Oh my God, you got paid for that? You better keep going and keep getting paid for these things." So I'm like, all
Right.
right.
All of a sudden, you speaking is so important in your marriage. It's
I
like,
know.
yes, please, please, please share more. Why aren't you in there talking at the computer again?
I know exactly. Exactly.
It's like, get to it, get to it. Okay. So you're a speaker, you're a consultant. For the folks who might be watching this, who are, people who can bring people in, people who might have a little bit of a budget, what are some of the projects that you've worked on in the last few months that you've been really excited about? And who do you want to help? Like, what's your mission for the next like 6 months? Who do you want to support?
Yeah, yeah. So I want to be able to support HR leaders, diversity practitioners in organizations where um you haven't really had a chance to focus on leadership in a more detailed capacity. Um, and I initially was thinking of going more at the in the tech space, which I still go towards the tech space, but this is any corporate organization. Um, especially those that are smaller, mid-sized level organizations, because I know resourcing oftentimes can be challenging. So how can we start, especially when we're at the foundational level, to build this up? And so some projects that I've done, which has been really cool and interesting, are a blend of different things. So one thing I'll say is I've done DEI audits for the company. So I'll go in and I'll look at different policies, procedures, leadership, and I'll go and I'll ask different questions about, what is a leadership style like this, or how do you incorporate DEI into this process? And giving a report back to organizations, they're always like, "Wow, this is very detailed. I didn't like. I thought things were working really well, but apparently this one particular process, like, we need to prioritize because it's not working well based on what our staff is saying." Um, so doing those DEI audits for processes across your company, um, I've done it either for specific departments or a company as a whole. And from a workshop perspective, um, I have done workshops for executive leaders or even people managers around how do you foster psychological safety for better teams? Because psychological safety in itself is ensuring that you have a space where folks feel like they can bring themselves to work, they can challenge the status quo, be innovative, and make mistakes without consequence. So when you're in a team as a leader, you need to be aware of things like your feedback style. How well do you know your team? Are you providing solutions or asking your team to work on certain projects, but not leveraging their strength, and you're offering similar um, decisions or offerings for your staff that's not really meeting them where they are? And even things like, how do you manage a diverse team? You might have team members who are neurodiverse, who are LGBTQ, who may be Black, whatever the situation is. And so that workshop in itself is incredibly interactive, and we go through some vulnerable exercises where I can ask a set of questions around their leadership style, and then we have a very honest conversation for how we can be better for our teams. So those are some things that I've done, and then there's value exercises as well, because I feel like as leaders, if we don't know what we value, it's hard to make decisions based on what we value, especially when it comes to self-care. So psychological safety is the umbrella, and there's many topics I do in terms of workshops. And then psychological safety also fits within those DEI audits as well, for how do you improve this process from a DEI perspective, but also ensure that you're giving spaces for folks to be successful.
Beautiful, really impactful work, Geronda, right? Like, I
Thank you.
mean, organizations right now need so much support with that, especially after the last couple of years that we've had with the pandemic, with the recession. So there's just so much need for your work. So two more questions for you, because I know, before we started this, y'all, Geronda was like, I got a meeting. And I never ever am gonna stop my clients from securing another bag. So you go on to that meeting. So I'll two
Thanks.
more questions for you. I know one thing that you've been really good with in the community is collaboration. I mean, you've submitted so many amazing proposals. Some have been accepted, some have not, right? You submitted with other people. So, can you share with people maybe one or two things that you've really enjoyed about your experience in speaking for profit? And if they're thinking about joining, any advice that you would give them?
Yeah, so what I really enjoy about speaking for profit is the community feeling. I know that sometimes you'll be offered something and it's like, oh, we're gonna build this community and it's gonna be a great space for you to ask questions and you're gonna relate to one another, and then you kind of show up and maybe you're the only person that's Black there, or maybe the community feeling isn't what you had anticipated. But what I really love about S for P is it's genuinely a community. I can post a question for folks and I'll get responses and great feedback on proposals or just thoughts I'm having about how to manage my business. And the calls that we have as well, I look forward to going to the calls, and I genuinely hate when I miss them, because you get to not only interact and connect with other people in the community, but they like when you have something that goes well for you and the successes, people are cheering you on. They want you to be successful. And when something doesn't go well, there's so much empathy and um, constructive feedback in a way that's also respectful so that you feel like, oh, I can actually improve in this area. And I'm not the only person going through this. And I know if I ask this question, no one's going to think it's stupid. And if I go and I want to just run something by people, like I'm not going to get judged for it. It's such a well-built community. There's consistency with it. And so the community feeling I love, and I love that um to Evolve's point of like I'll post proposals and I'll post certain things with people and I'll get feedback on it. It doesn't feel like this huge competition where it's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna take you on this proposal and I'm gonna like try to make it an emulate. It's like we're sharing with each other to make each other better. And I love that. Advice that I would give to anyone who's interested in joining S4P, um, join it is my advice. And I say that because I've gone through other speaking programs before, and this is not like a bashing session. Like they've been great programs, but what differentiates S4P so much is that community feeling and the presence and the engagement. So if I ask a question, I know within 24 to 48 hours, sometimes even sooner, I'm gonna get a response. Um, I also know that other folks are available to be able to just jump on a call and talk through something if we don't need to wait until the next meeting. And I've gotten so much clarity and confidence from joining S4P where I know we were talking about at the beginning of like what do I talk about? What's like how did I get to where I am now in terms of my topic? I was all over the place before I joined S4P. And I think that's what, even though I've gotten paid, I think it's been a hurdle to try to just get opportunities. But ever since I've gotten clarity, I've built more confidence. You know, Evolve mentioned the LinkedIn Live. I have the LinkedIn Live series, and these are things I probably wouldn't have done had I not had a team of people behind me, cheering me on and helping me to grow and get better. So the growth and development that I've gotten since joining S4P has been fantastic. And I've secured really great bags. There's been times where I haven't secured them, but I learned so much from it. And I just keep growing and getting confident in my ability to do this. So definitely join because Evolve and BX don't play around. It's good accountability too.
Definitely. And you know what? I really appreciate you being a part of the community, Geronda, because I think what you're really great at is imperfect action. And I know one of your goals, right, when we first started working together was getting this house that you got, right? So I want to shout you out because you are a new homeowner. But even stepping into that process, I remember us having conversations about it and you went for it. You could have stepped back and said, you know, I'm gonna wait. Some people get that, they get their credit score, they pay off the debt and they wait because they get nervous. But you always are willing to jump in the pool and willing to commit to imperfect action. So I just want to give kudos and love to you, Geronda, because I'm really proud of the person that you're becoming. And I know that you're impacting and changing so many lives.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Couldn't
No
do without
problem.
you.
No problem. So before you go, because I know you got your meeting, just share with folks how they can work with you, connect with you, and stay in Geronda's field of love and field of life right now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I do have a LinkedIn Live series. So if you go to my LinkedIn, it's Geronda Wollack-Spiller. And on there, when you go to events, that's where you can find all the different recordings of my LinkedIn Live series called Leading in the Moment with Geronda. And I go through various topics on a biweekly basis, just on tangible, tactical ways that you can improve yourself as a leader. So we talked about things like self-care and psychological safety at work, or what was your leadership story? Because that can impact your understanding of what a leader is, and how you want to be a leader. So there's that there, and then the other piece that I'll share as well. Majority of my stuff is on LinkedIn, but I also have a newsletter called Leading in the Moment, and there is when I start to give some more detail and tactics and resources and free things and ways for you to connect with me for coaching or different ways that you want to have consulting or speaking. So those are two of my biggest resources that I'll share.
Definitely. Y'all better get into that. We're going to put this in the show notes so you can make sure you have it. Again, thank you so much, Geronda, for stopping by Speaking for Profit podcast. We appreciate you. And until next time, good people, peace.